Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Love you too, brother. Really, really grateful to be here tonight. And thank you, Eric, for graciously allowing me to share my anniversary. Um, my younger daughter, had this idea for me to, she said, why don't you speak somewhere and invite your friends and family to it? And it reminded me, when I got sober in New York, my mom and dad used to come to the anniversary meetings. It was really deep, man. I mean, it was deep. Going to anniversary meetings where family shows up, man, this is a whole different vibe. It's a very powerful experience. And my mom, my first sponsor was whacked out of his fucking mind, out of his mind. And when he told his story, which I won't tell you, my mom didn't hear anything about how insane he was, how his drinking took him into madness. She just got filled with the spirit of recovery and she loved coming. And it was really so when Hallie suggested this, I kind of lit up because all the people who I've invited are people who mean a tremendous amount to me, who are contributing to my well-being and help me in more ways and love me up in ways I can't even ever say thank you. So thank you. I'm going to tell a little bit of my story, not the whole story, because I have a long recovery story, and I want to focus more on that. But um, it's this experience of being driven beyond my will. Like I didn't really know I was being driven beyond my will when I started drinking. I had no idea. I mean, like many of us, um, there was a lot intergenerational alcoholism and a lot of stress and a lot of, happiness, but a lot of despair in my family. It was difficult. And you know, many of us come from these backgrounds where we witness heartbreak and my grandfather committed suicide drinking. So, it was just a intergenerational lineage of pain. And my mom was multiply addicted. And so, uh, you know, it was painful. I was happy on one level and in tremendous confusion and unhappiness on some levels. Uh, and already the alcoholic personality had taken over. I was already getting into trouble in kindergarten, not following rules. I mean, I was already defiant. I was already having a hard time with authority. And so by the time I was, when I was in second grade, in sixth grade, they put me in second grade to break my spirit because I was too curious, too smart, too funny. So I built up quite a head of steam of anger and frustration and loneliness and confusion and so when I started drinking, like many of us, it was love at first sight. Definitely love at first sight. I felt that ease and comfort immediately, and it was like making out with a chick who you love making out with. Like, oh, why wouldn't I want to make out for hours? You know what I mean? I mean, just so nice, so sweet, pillowy kissing, delicious kissing, and so that drink, I just started drinking, and that was it. And I didn't understand that there were voices in my head at the time. I didn't know that I had a mental obsession about life being driven by my old pains and narratives. I just knew that I was driven and I didn't know that I had a mental obsession or a craving or any of that stuff. I just wanted to drink. I wanted to feel better, and I did it. And my life went off the rails pretty quick as a teenage alcoholic, very quickly. My behavior went off the wall, and I just uh, started breaking laws. I started dropping out of high school. My mother had a prayer for me, God bless stupid animals and my son. That was my mother's prayer for me. I was wild and out of my mind with drinking. And I was drinking, quart of scotch by 16 and a half years old. I was sitting and drinking, listening to music, smoking dope and listening to jazz and Bob Dylan and John Coltrane and Pharoah Sanders and Jimi Hendrix and zoning out of my mind uh, and feeling that peace, that comfort, that the medicine was there for me. And so anyway, I was on fire internally. So anyway, um, I was 16 and a half years old. I was already, hitting it hard, and I was drinking as much as I could. I was, stealing booze from my mom's cabinets when I could and hustling money and just pretty much getting loaded, most every single day, really, and getting into trouble pretty quickly as well. real trouble with people, illegal stuff, kind of crazy stuff. My mind went off, and I had no more relationship with everyday life, and I had no interest in joining the human race. I was one of those kind of guys. I don't know where they get the phrase functional alcoholic. I'm not sure. I don't know how you could be a functional alcoholic. Think you're a functional alcoholic. Maybe you can show up at work, but alcoholics are not functional. Um, so anyway, it just continued, and I tried to stop drinking when I was around 19. I was pretty much out of control by 19. At 18, I was living in a hotel, the Hotel Paris in Manhattan, with the first love of my life. She was posing naked, making a couple $100 a day, and supporting me and three of my friends in the hotel room. We were drinking beer, smoking dope, and getting loaded. I'd run away from home. I was just, I was out there and living grandiosely, taking a lot of chances. I could have been in jail, could have been arrested many times, drunk, doing crazy stuff. I had no sense of being in control, none. And my heroes were all the drug addicts and alcoholics, all the writers who killed themselves, all the musicians who killed themselves. Those were my heroes. And I was on the path to kill myself before I was 30. Really, that was the path I was on. And drugs, I used a lot of psychedelics during that time, and but the drinking was consistent. And when you're drinking all the time, you don't think I have a problem. I didn't think I have a problem. I just did it. It felt better, and had no sense of what it was doing to my body. I was already kind of having vicious hangovers and ignoring them, and driving drunk, and just unbelievable amount of out of control behavior, and out of control drinking and drugging. My first geographic cure, I got into California Institute of the Arts, a school out in California, and I was trying to get away from my friends, and we were all drinking. I figured I got to get away. I got into this school for the arts. I was a published writer before I was 20. I was, just starting out in the jazz world, playing music, which became my second obsession. And I drank my way out of that school, which was a real heartbreak because it was an opportunity of a lifetime to become a filmmaker, to write, or to study music. It was just what my soul wanted. I always felt like I was a prisoner in school. I felt like I was in a cage all the time in the educational world. But I always had angel. I always had spirit helpers. And that goes through my life in AA. And to kind of move it along. There's a long story both ways. I drank my way out of the California Institute of the Arts and ended up back in New York and got involved with some gangsters and pot gangsters at the time, and started driving lots of money and weed around the country. And I morphed into this really ridiculous. I kind of thought I was now Ray Liotta. I was now in a new persona. I was dressing like I had, you know, dressing like a gangster. Like, and I'm as tough as I catch a fly. I put it outside the glass. That's how tough I am. So anyway, I morphed into these personas, and I was drinking and drugging and taking lots of chances. And alcohol was always on board. Drugs were always on board, and um, and I got caught, um, and indicted by a federal grand jury, and went on the lam for about 6 months. And this is really shortening my story. Went out to California, and at this point, I'd been drinking and drugging, and the drugs had stopped for about 8 years, and my guts were done. I drank, 4 drinks. I'd drink myself straight. If I drank, one drink, I'd get drunk. My system was shot. It's pretty suicidal at that point. Anyway, came back to New York um, after facing this federal grand jury, and thank God I wasn't put in jail by the grace of God. And my mom had a nervous breakdown. She was multiply addicted, and my cousin said to me, who was in the program, she knew I wasn't ready. She said, "Why don't you start going to Al-Anon from your mom?" So I was still drinking and going to Al-Anon, trying to pick women up. I loved Al-Anon. I was the only man loved to pick up women. I was trying to pick, and the women who whacked out the most liked me the most. So I was going and drinking at Al-Anon meetings and not even realizing they were talking about me. I mean, that's how gone I was. And so anyway, I kept on drinking, and this is my story, which is really kooky, but I end up in an Arts Anonymous meeting. I'm a lost soul in Manhattan. I don't know what I'm doing. I end up in somebody's house in an Arts Anonymous meeting, and I met this really nice fella there, and we went out there for Chinese food, and he tried to pick me up. And I said, I'm not gay, but let's eat noodles together. And he was a lovely guy, and we just kind of had a great time together. And he said, "Have you ever thought of going to AA?" This guy tried to pick me up and take me to a Chinese restaurant. That's really where I heard of AA. I never heard of AA in Illinois. I don't know why. Anyway, you know, at this point, I was a broken human. I look older than I am today. And so I was broken and lost and frightened and insecure. I was like a burn victim and didn't know I was burned. And so I went to a few AA meetings, and, I hated him. I had never been in a detox. I kept comparing myself here, there. This guy, I hated this guy, Harold. He never said hello to me. I said, he's a son of a bitch. And nobody welcomed me. And, I got sober for a long time ago. It wasn't like we counted days 40 years ago. Nobody clapped for you. There was none of this. There was a lot of warm and fuzzy stuff in AA at that time. If you came 3 or 4 times, people would say, they welcome you, shake your hand, but nobody's running over to try to save you. And so I went to this meeting for a while. I couldn't stand it. I didn't like the people there. Kept on drinking. And one night on Yom Kippur night, I found myself at the 79th Street Workshop, well, in Manhattan. And I don't know how I got there. I have no recollection. And it was a 10 o'clock meeting. And when you go to the 10 o'clock meeting at the workshop, it's on. Nobody goes to a 10 o'clock meeting when they're relaxed. Believe me, it's on. The energy's intense. Kathy knows. People are wired for sound, and I sit in the back of the room. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was, my guts was shot. I don't know what the hell I was. I was just broken down. I couldn't even drink like I used to drink. I was so broken down. I was pissing hot a lot. I was my pains in my kidneys. I was just out of it from all the booze. And I heard a lady share who was completely different than me. We come at day A, right? And you know, I didn't really identify with her, but I identified with the condition she had because she was a periodic drinker and I was not a periodic drinker. But I identified not just with the feelings she had, but I wasn't even conscious at the time, but I was identifying with how she felt, what the booze did to her, being out of control, the inability to stop, drinking beyond her will, the loneliness, the intense loneliness. I think that's really what caught me was the isolation and loneliness I was living in. And at that moment, I cracked. I don't know what happened. I just cracked. I cracked open. I have no idea. I know that was the first grace of the Spirit was cracking. I cracked open and I just and this is where, just like I drank beyond my will, I'm very responsible, real aware that I really wasn't choosing AA. I was directed to AA. I'm very clear about that, it wasn't like I was directing my will to attend. I mean, I had to use my will to it, but that force was driving me. That force was leading me. That force was guiding me. Um, and um, and I just started going to meetings and a lot. There's a million meetings in Manhattan, and I went to some meeting, and like a little kid, I sidled up to this cat who told his story, and I was standing next to him like a 7-year-old. He said, "What do you want?" I didn't talk. I was like, I said, he said, "What do you want? Why are you standing next to me?" So I said, "Will you sponsor me?" And he said, "Oh, okay." And so Steve Barton, I never forget the guy. And so I got a sponsor. It was a Templeton in Manhattan, and right away, when I went to Templeton, they grabbed me and put me into service immediately. They joked around with me. I've said this in this meeting before. The guy came up to me and said, um, "We see a lot of special qualities in you." We don't normally give people service positions, but when we see somebody has a lot of special qualities, we kind of want to recognize this. Don't tell anybody, but we see you, you're kind of special. So they stuck me in a coffee commitment. It was maybe 45 days, 50 days sober, I was, my story is I got involved in AA service immediately. And, um, and I was making the coffee. It was like 150 people in that meeting. And I was spending the treasury at Dina DeLuca buying cookies and cakes and catering it like I was a caterer, making Cuban coffee that made people run to the bathroom in the middle of the meeting. And finally, the chairman said, "Man, you got to stop spending all that money, man. Okay, like just buy the fucking Chips Ahoy. Okay, please stop going to Dina DeLuca and making a. You're not a caterer." And so I came to AA, and you know, I was separated from the booze. That's just what happened to me. I was separated from the mania to drink. I mean, that's what happened, and I was very fortunate. My story is full of being loved deeply in AA by amazing human beings, and some of the angels showed up. Jimmy the Hugger and Angry Tom and Jerry Beckerman and I found my way to the PAX group in Manhattan, where I became a member for 10 years while I was living in New York. And I just I found myself just being moved into AA, moved into AA. I was going to meetings a couple times a day and just, doing service. And I had a sponsor. And my first introduction to the big book was from Sister Maurice, this very tough nun who grabbed me when I was sober early. And she said, "You're a very sick young man, and your mind is out of control. It's untamed. It's out of control." And she gave me a big book and opened up to page 86 and 88 and said, "I want you to read Upon Awakening." And I didn't even know what I was reading. She said, "Before you can start, I want you to read it." And I found myself at that point, I had been on a spiritual journey most of my life. Um, while I was drinking as well, I was very curious, and I was practicing Buddhism, all kind of mystical stuff, and going all the way back. And I'll tell you in a minute, and to an experience I had with my grandma, and and I just found myself, uh, you know, in churches on my knees. Now, I was born a Jew, and so we don't get on our knees. I'm not consider myself affiliated anymore with any organized religion, but I just found myself, the Spirit was moving me. I was experiencing the energy of the Spirit, the presence. I didn't know what the hell it was. I was finding myself between meetings at St. Thomas Cathedral in Manhattan a lot, in the silence there, and praying, and I don't know what having, you know, imaginal visions of things. I was going out of my mind really, because when I got sober, my mind really went wild. And one of the things that's so important for us to understand is that while the experience of being in the program in the beginning releases us from the mania of the first drink, um, the mania of alcoholism doesn't go away because you stop drinking. This illness does not go away, and it can destroy you in sobriety the same way it can destroy you while you're drinking. And many people go nuts and mad in sobriety. So not picking up a drink, as we said in the book, is the beginning, necessary beginning, important beginning, essential beginning. It's only a beginning. As it says in the book, alcohol is but a symptom, right? That's what it is. It's a symptom. It's a symptom of this mind, this voices in my head that that just drove me nuts and created so much emotional pain and confusion. And so, I just, when I came to AA, in New York, it was kind of an amazing place, man. I used to go to the Yale to jail meeting where some guy'd be pissing on his shoes and there'd be a CEO sitting next to him, and there'd be somebody, some actress, people, electricians. I go to that meeting every day at 2:30, walk up those stairs, and I just started to experience the love before I could really wake up to any kind of awareness. Because when I went through the steps, Mary Thayer always says, go through the steps poorly till you can do them well. Well, my first sponsor really didn't know what the hell he was doing when I went through the steps. I don't know what the hell he was doing. I went through them. I didn't get too much out of it. I got a little out of it, but not a lot out of it. But I was experiencing the love in AA because that's the bridge. That's the bridge. That's the bridge to freedom. That's the bridge to a new life. That's the bridge to feeling inspired, to finding not finding peace yet, but finding kind of a spark and for life and a willingness and grace is a willing is grace is willingness is the first grace. That was what I experienced when I look back. It was just the grace was willingness because while I got myself to 3 meetings a day for a couple of years, it wasn't me, making myself go. I was being led and moved to by the Spirit. And as I went through the 12 steps, I stopped working with Matthew and I started working with Tommy Burtis, who was a really great guy. And I think he's sober 55 years now. He was my his sponsor for me and Tommy H. And he took me through the fourth step and um, really helped me start to understand the third column, um, you know, a lot about help me understand that that to not look at character defects, to look at what was driving my thinking, to help me to understand that the imaginary mind, the imaginary situations that my ego was creating was what was torturing me. It was not the situations I was in. And he really emphasized that. And he can always say to me, he's a tough guy from the Bronx, treat the disease, treat the disease, treat the disease. So he always say. And Tommy loved me a lot. And Tommy and another cat, Jerry Beckerman, co-sponsored me. And I became part of the groups. My story is a story of love and service. Very inspired by people. I just got into it. I just got into it always. And but I was being led all to these very, very beautiful spiritual people. I got led up to Graymore up in New York, where I met Sister Claire Murphy, who became my spiritual friend for 10 years. And I'd never prayed with people in a room, and I'd go up to Graymore. I don't know if anybody knows about Graymore, but it's a very holy place up in New York State where the most desperate of alcoholics walk up often with no hope. And it's a Franciscan monastery. And I'd go up to see Sister Claire and just freaked out. And I'd pray with her and talk to her. And she'd tell me, go be quiet and come back and talk to her. And I would just experience her love. And she was inspiring me. And and Tom really got me into I really went through the steps. Um, in the big book, some, but very much in the 12 and 12. I see the big book in the 12 and 12 is one cosmic text. I don't really see it separately. In my mind, it's just a lived record of the awakening. I don't see it as separate than other. They just one was written 12 years later. There's just, when it comes alive, it comes alive. And it came alive. And I went through, these experiences of being curious. I went to see, different Hindus and Buddhists, and I just felt myself being moved and spiritually curious all the time. And I was to just kind of be open. I was just open to love, open to learning, open to being changed, you know. And man, I just had so many people. I don't know why my hand went out to reach out. And I was a bum when I was drunk. I was a bum. I was not a functioning member of society. I mean, I was not. Uh, so I had to become socialized in AA. I mean, I didn't know how to go pick out a greeting card for people. I'd say I make my own greeting cards. That's for chumps, and I go to buy a card. One of my guys said, "Go buy a card for someone." I'd sit in a place in a card store, and I break into a cold sweat because I say, "Oh, I don't really feel this way." I would sit there for 40 minutes reading cards, and I said, "I can't agree with this. This is bullshit. This is phony." I couldn't even relax. I was so out of it. I was not part of the human race. It took me a long time to be part of the human race in sobriety. It did. It's my story, and in the sobriety, I went back to school, and I got married. My kids are here. My 3 kids are here. I love my kids. And to me, being a family man was like the kiss of death. That was the last thing I wanted. Family man, kill me now. That wasn't my plan to be a family man, and that's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Um, And so I got married, went to school, and, and I had very in-depth experiences with the eighth and ninth step. That's when I was rocketed into a different level of freedom. I wasn't rocketed into the fourth dimension in the fourth step. But when I did the ninth step with my ex, I felt a liberation, and I felt a spiritual, like the air going through me, that was unbelievable. I felt it was up in California, and I was driving down. After I did it, I was driving down the Highway 1. I pulled over to a rock overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and I just felt this experience of freedom, and and it was lifted. The past was lifted, and it's an incredible experience to not for the past to be lifted from stuff that felt so painful and so unresolved. And so, I've had different mentors and different teachers through the course of my sobriety, many, many wonderful people who've, in New York, there wasn't the big, it was walking the walk, not talking the talk. People were walking versions of the program. There wasn't as many big book meetings at those times, and and but you can kind of feel it when somebody's living this way of life, where it's no longer a program, it's a way of life. You can feel it when someone has that quiet sense where they have that thank you for the gift of being alive and being sober. You can feel it. You can feel their spirit. You can feel it. You can feel it when people don't talk about what they do, but give quietly. You can feel it when people I knew were going through cancer and losing kids and having horrific and difficult things happen in their life, and going it through it with dignity and continuing, not making anybody at the other end of their pain, and so I was led to many people like that who became part of my life, who were my inspirations, who were the people who I could talk to and learn how to apply the principles of the program to, and learn how to be honest and transparent, and learn how to feel safe, and being lost at times. And that powerlessness, that experience of collapsing. There's a book that Kurt turned me on to, about by Rami Shapiro called Surrender, and Rami Shapiro has that line where he talks about that surrender is just a tactic. But what I also realized that surrender, which is beyond my will, is a collapse into love. That's what it is. It's a collapse. It's a falling back into the presence. It's a falling back into the infinite, where there is no time, no space, where there's love. And and that happened to me. It happens. I think a lot of us, we don't realize it really. And sobriety, when that starts to happen, when you fall back into the generosity and love of others, um, there's a naturalness to it. There's a naturalness to it that um, just creates a thank you, a very deep thank you, that kind of reverential thank you. Because to have people care this deeply about me, this is not a little thing. Really, it's not like, oh, well, all these people were nice to me. Oh, well, these people took me through the steps. Oh, well, it's an unbelievable power experience to have this shared humanity with other human beings who, they're giving it away because, first we told we give it away because we have to. Then we give it away if we're lucky because we want to. And then we give it away because we know it's a privilege to give it away. And I was receiving from people who felt it was a privilege to pass it on, to pass that love on, to pass that wisdom on, to pass those wisdom teachings on. And so, I have there's no rationale or logic to why my spirit said yes. None, none. I don't claim any credit for saying yes. I know it was pure grace. And I'm one of those people who, at 40 years sober, feel as much enthusiasm and love for AA as I walked in. And that's not, yeah, that's no, uh, pat on my back. There's no fucking Yodas in AA. There's no, if anybody tells you you're a Yoda, run. Okay. There's no Yodas, there's no big shots, there's nobody knows it all. There are those of us who are devoted to this way of life and devoted to our spiritual life, who have something to share with each other and have something to give to each other, and at all different stages of our sobriety. And life happens, right? And in the 12 and 12, it talks about, do you want a way of a promise? Do you want a way of an unshakable foundation for living? And it talks about prayer, meditation, and self-examination are create an unshakable foundation for living. Well, you don't really know if you have an unshakable foundation for living until you start facing life, right? I mean, that when it's not just going your way. And so, you know, like all of us, my wife had cancer when I was 10 years sober, my son was one, parents dying, all the shit that happens and, you know, being able to have this kind of calm and have this a way of meeting life and being in life without feeling victimized, without blaming, without complaining, and just being able to kind of uh, be part of this human existence, which happens to all of us, and be able to show up, as a loving, compassionate, good human, right? The best you can. And I wanted the unshakable foundation of life. And um, and I had a sponsor at the time who was a really kooky fuck. His name was Jack Kelly. And he had the fire of the spirit in his eyes, blue eyes, looked like the guy who walked off the mountain. He was on fire. And this is the kind of love I experienced when my wife was, near death. He'd say, listen, I'm going to be in the diner near NYU. It was a 50-minute train ride. And I'll hang out in the diner from 3 to 5. And if you can make it, that's cool. If you can't make it, don't worry about it. And he would do that 1 or 2 days a week. And some days I couldn't make it. Some days I could while she was in the hospital for about, 4 or 5 weeks before they could start treating her. So to be touched by that kind of love, man, that's deep. That's the kind of love that asks for nothing. That's the kind of love that heals. That's the kind of love that just raises the frequency of life and does something. It plants a seed in your heart. It does, and it awakens more of that, more of your true nature. And so, I love Jack. And so, I love Jack. Jack. And so so, you know, we always talk about it, a lot of us fellas, that sobriety is stage specific. And, one of the things that happens as we go through that, that third step experience, we've been released from the drinking, but now we have to be willing to be released from our old ideas, right? We have to continually be released from our old ideas. These reference points don't serve very well. Um, well, how does that happen? Well, again, the grace of willingness and waking up. And, so I didn't think in these terms, but I knew that I was having a progressive level of awakening. Awakening goes on through your whole life. It's not a one-shot deal, right? And so um, I was living in an intimate connection with life. I was with others, with the world. Um, I was experiencing those many of those promises. Was not perfect, but I began to kind of. I found a profession which I could contribute in. I found work which has meaning, and I did my best to be a good father to my kids, who my great teachers. I did my best to be a good husband to my wife. Um, I did my best to really. I had a covenant with the spirit, which is I'll go to any lengths not to harm another human being. To me, that's equally as important as a covenant to want to be released from drinking. And and I will go to any lengths not to do that. And all inspired from the spirit, the presence. And so we know that this awakening is an ongoing process. And this egocentric, chaotic mind, which is what we're really treating as we start to wake up, we start to realize that the problem is centered in our mind. It's not the booze. It's the mind. It's this untamed voices in our head, this chaotic mind, which can drive us into despair, into all kind of pain. And if we don't develop God consciousness to see, um, then we live in a whole other level of suffering. Sobriety is going to have some pain. I mean, for me, it was. I've had many bottoms in sobriety because I have ignorance, you know, and I have not always seen clearly. And when I don't see things clearly because the filters are there, I react poorly. I react in ways, and we have, the grace of these steps to accompany us. So we don't have to live in that bondage of self, right? And so, um, you know, the last 5 years have been very profound for me. Um, I've had many beautiful experiences with guys I sponsor on here, who some of my great teachers. I've had the great privilege of being able to love these guys, be part of their lives. And the healing is not only of ourselves, but of our relationships with others. That's really what becomes possible. And life is sweet because of those relationships. There's a meaning to it. There's a purpose to it. There's a deliciousness to loving and feeling loved. It's delicious. It's like eating a sweet peach. You know what I mean? It's good. It's good. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking of something that, and so maybe 5 years ago, I had a lot of shit happen, cancer, two near-death experiences the last 5 years, and as with the Zoom grace, um, and how I'm led to wonderful folks, I met my soul brother Curdy Boy Williamson on the call, and Chris and Ray and Kurt, he kind of opened up the cosmic dimension of the Big Book for me. He really did. And I began to have a whole different awakened state of mind. And and when I was going through all these serious health issues, near death experiences, um, I was kind of, I was peace. I mean, like, I was clowning when they rolled me into the operating room and they cut my fucking heart open and took my heart out of my chest. I mean, like, I was glad I didn't go to WebMD to find out what it looked like. Open heart surgery. And I was joking around with the nurses. And the nurse says to me, don't mess around with that one because she's probably holding your heart in the chest. She'll be holding your heart in your hand in about a half hour. And so to have peace, is a gift, and when we go through all the 12 steps, like I said in the 12 and 12, when a man or woman has a spiritual awakening, um, the important meaning is you've been granted a new state of consciousness and being. That's what it says. And you know, I'm always a little shy to say I have these things, but I was experiencing those things, just freedom and and being cracked open on one more level to receive love, to be open and to grow spiritually and to grow in awareness and to not see things as two, but see things as one. And when I was, recovering from the open heart surgery, my son came and spent 6 weeks nursing me back into health. And and my kids all loved me up, all. And imagine getting into the shower as a grown man naked with your son and having him wash your back when you can't even move, teach you how to walk again. That's some deep shit. I mean, so, I tell you these experiences because to feel that kind of love, to be broken open to say yes, that's part of the ongoing experience because sobriety is divine, it's relational, um, and to begin to really wake up and feel the preciousness of this human life. That's what this sobriety is about. It's about living in these moments and being aware that this moment leads to the next moment, to the next moment, and that there's a preciousness to having this life. And if you don't see the narrative and the voices in your head, if you're always being driven by these thought processes and you can't see through them, and your mind is constantly in this place of complaining and wanting things to be your way, which is this illness, and when you're trying to arrange the deck chairs on the Titanic in your own life, you know what I mean? When you're constantly compelled to not be able to see what is, it's torment. It's a tormented life, and it becomes possible to be free. To be free of many, many fears, most fears, to not be living in the future. What does Curdy always say? Thank God I'm not suffering from the things that aren't happening anymore, right? You know, that's one of his taglines, you know? And isn't that true? Thank God I'm not suffering from what isn't happening. Thank God I'm not suffering most of the time. And I've been someone who's been in a couple of different programs. You know, I've needed a couple of programs, and I see them all as one program with 12 steps going through all of them. I've needed help in different areas, not just alcoholism. Al-Anon, OA, DA. I got a lot of shit going on I've had to deal with. And I've had the willingness, um, um, graced by the Spirit, to realize it's just 12 steps and they're all manifestations of the same illness. This manifest and the layers get peeled back. And so, you know, I bow to the Spirit and to the people who have loved me and to health. I can't, you know, I can never ever say thank you enough to AA, you know. And you know, in the big book it says, "And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For this time sanity will have returned. We'll seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we'll find that this has happened automatically. It didn't happen because I went to the Tony Robbins program. It didn't happen because I went to the Joe and Charlie seminars and listened to his tapes. Okay, it's you know it's because I've had a spiritual awakening. Right, I've been granted a new state of consciousness. We'll see that a new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. Like that's probably this is, you know, not probably in your meeting, but that's probably the least read things in AA is this paragraph, the 10-step promises. Least read in AA is that the problem has been removed. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. That is a miracle. To not be suffering and being driven by all this egoic mind, this false self, this that's tormenting us. We're not fighting it, nor we're avoiding temptation. I was a war man at the human race. I was at war in sobriety inside for 10 years. I mean, at war inside me. I was. I didn't know it, all the things I was at war with. Um, the level of empathy and understanding, I didn't, I had some of it, you know. I was more interested in talking than listening. Um, that's the miracle of it. We're neither fighting it nor are we avoiding temptation. We feel it's been placed in the position of neutrality. And, you know, that neutrality is that place of presence, that place where all is well, that place where it talks about if we stay close to the Spirit, we'll get what we need as we need it. That's been my story. You know, I've gotten what I need when I need it. I do feel safe and protected, not because of my mind, but because um, I'm no longer deluded that I'm disconnected. I don't have to get connected to the Spirit. I already am. I don't have to get connected. That's the disease. I'm disconnected, the feeling alone, feeling like I have to rely on myself, that I have to try to live in a delusion that I need to kind of manage things well, you know, that as opposed to that divine release of letting go, of collapsing into the loving embrace of the Spirit. And first, we collapse into the loving embrace of people, right? People love us into health in AA. We've not sworn off. Instead, the problem's been removed. It doesn't exist for us. That's unbelievable. We're neither cocky nor afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react to as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And so you know, I'm grateful. You know, I feel like you know um, the gratitude that's been released in me. You know, is it makes me want to cry. It's kind of deep. You know, I just you know, I'm very fortunate to be alive and to have people love me and my dear friends, my daughter Bess and Hallie and Sam and my wife Susan and Kathy and Richard and Curdy and Chris and you know people care about me and you know it's you know I it's an overwhelmingly deep thing to be to have done my best to pass
But
it
maybe I
on,
won't go through
and so I
unfold my cards and everything's fine.
anyway, I don't know what's going on. Bet on the fourth horse in the third race. Anyway, uh, so I thank all of you for listening, and I can never say thank you enough to AA, to the Spirit for all the kindness and loving compassion I've been given. And I'll end with this thing I read every day from the Dalai Lama: a precious human life. Every day, think as you wake up. Today, I'm fortunate to have woken up. I'm alive. I have a precious human life. I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use all of my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. I'm going to have kind thoughts towards others, not think badly of others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. That's the experience that has been awoken in me in AA. Thank you.